Good morning, everyone. Welcome to House Services. Today is Friday, April 24th, and we are hearing testimony this morning on S-198, an act relating to the regulation of tobacco products and tobacco substitutes. We're going to get started with Maggie Lenz, who is a lobbyist for the Vermont Retail and Grocers Association. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Maggie Lenz, on behalf of the Vermont Retail Grocers Association. My testimony on this bill is pretty short. We initially had some concerns. My testimony since the beginning has been really focused on the fees, decoupling of fees, and the proposed increase in the Senate version, as well as the penalty. I think it's important to note that the compliance checks for selling to minors or members exceed expectations. I think something like 90 to 93% compliance, I believe, is the number. So very compliant membership, and they really want to, they care deeply about keeping kids safe as well. So we have been focused on the fees, the penalty, and where the bill is now. While I can't, sit here and say that we support an increase in fees, we felt really good about the process where we came down to with the draft that you have now. I think everybody came to the table and found a pretty decent compromise. So we are okay with this version. We would hope that you'd leave it as is.
Any questions for Maggie? Thank you.
I don't have a question, but
Go ahead, Representative.
are you concerned that fees might hurt small business owners?
We're always concerned about that. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think the case was made that this one, I'm not going to argue in favor of them, but we did understand the case that was made that it was tied to inflationary measures. So I think it hadn't been raised for a little bit. We don't love the decoupling structure, the addition of any type of fees. It's not something that we can sit here and say we support, but we don't oppose it. We understand it. And I think we wanted to meet people who were meeting us with a compromise and say, we think that if this is how far you're willing to go, we're willing to accept that and to not oppose it. So it's a nuanced position. We're not ever going to support an increase in fees on our members, but at the same time, the original proposal was dramatic. We would have no problem, I think, going to bat opposing that one. This one, I think we can.
That would be the only reason I would vote no.
Yeah, we can't say that we support it, but we also are not going to sit here and oppose it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bishop.
Would you know how many years it has been since the fees were last adjusted?
Oh my gosh, the number was raised and I don't remember. I can get back to you with that. Is there anyone in the room that remembers this? DLLC.
I think it's 10 years. Okay, thank you. 2015.
Thank you. Any other questions? Maggie? Well, that was short and sweet.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your testimony. And next, we have the Health Department. Ayla, welcome. Nice to see you too. Oh, and Maggie, did you have something you could send in writing?
Happy to put something.
Yeah.
I haven't drafted anything, but I am happy to. And I'll send
Yeah,
it
just
to any
post it. That would be wonderful. Thank you. Same for you. I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't yet, but we absolutely will.
Great. Where's yours?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Shayla Livingston. I am currently the interim deputy commissioner at the health department. And I also have online Rhonda Williams, who runs the tobacco program at the health department, and is much more knowledgeable on this topic than I am. So we don't have a ton of comments on the bill itself. I think you've heard a lot of testimony from folks around what it does, and it's not, and from DLL and tax, and it's not something that we're implementing actively. And what we heard from the chair was maybe you wanted to know more about the data and the information around tobacco and nicotine prevention and cessation in Vermont, and what the work that we do and what we're seeing now. And so we can do a little bit of that. Again, I'm not the expert, Rhonda is, and we weren't totally sure where you wanted to focus. And the wonderful thing about this program is we have decades and decades of evidence and data and evaluation and all this like huge wealth of knowledge. And so what I want to do today is try to figure out what is helpful for you all, how we can focus it, and then work with the program to come back to you with a presentation that might be more specific to the things that you want to learn about and need. And I don't know, Lori, can you let me into the Zooms? Does that sound okay?
It does. And I think, the testimony that we've heard, and committee members, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but I think we're interested in kind of results and data from the youth behavior risk survey. And then, we heard some testimony from school counselors about the lack of support services and options for kids who are involved with their, counselors or the officer. I forget what the name of that position is.
SAP, yes.
Yeah,
Assistance professional, yep.
Right. So like not having, so I would be interested in what is investment and what programs are available for school counselors to be able to refer kids to.
Sure.
And then understanding reducing access to the flavored this technology, if it would be beneficial for our youth in Vermont, to have less access to this. Those are, I think, the three questions. If they can't be answered today, they might be.
Yeah, we can give it a start. And again, you guys can tell us if you want us to bring back more. We are excited you're interested in this topic. Rhonda could actually talk about it all day. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to just, hopefully, I'm going to share my screen. And I will send Lori all of these links so that you have them. Again, the issue here is sort of information overload. And so I don't want to overload you, but I also want to show you what we have available so that you have an understanding of that. So this is just our sort of homepage for the tobacco program in Vermont. And we try to make it really accessible. We try to make it really comprehensive. Again, this program has just an enormous wealth of information. And so this is a link that I just wanted to alert you to that you can explore. We've got stuff on policy. We've got stuff on data use. We have sort of this whole huge library of facts and figures for you. This is the overview. You can see it on the screen. And so this is an example of the type of information you can find on our website and the sort of wealth of evidence around what is working and what isn't working. And this is a policy, sort of the timeline of policy and use in Vermont. So not going to go into huge detail, but just want to say the world's your oyster there in terms of what you can find. The program this year did a really beautiful report. We're really trying to show specifically, really for you all, what it is that we do in Vermont with our money. And sort of to your question, what are we buying? What are we investing in? How is this money being used? And one of it's great. It's really helpful and useful. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight in this is the tenuous situation we're in with the federal government and federal funding. And so when we think about what can we do for tobacco prevention and cessation, nicotine prevention and cessation in Vermont, just know that the federal dollars are here right now and that we're continuing to be not entirely sure that this will be our budget going forward. So here is the actual budget. And again, this is a report, not a presentation. So I'm sorry about all the words on the page, but it is important to understand where we're putting our money and why. So we do a lot of work with community organizations, and we put almost $1 million, 27% of our budget into working directly with those community organizations. We do a ton of harm prevention and media campaigns, treatment media campaigns. So you see down, I'm going on the left-hand side of the screen down to the orange bucket. So that's how we're trying to basically counter target all of the advertising and information that's going out to Vermonters and about, trying to get them to start using or use these products. And the price of this keeps going up. So just note that we are doing as much as we can in the space of the resources we have. But the industry has a lot of money and is, working hard to get the information to folks. And so we are doing our best to counter that. And I want to be really clear. Sometimes we get questions about like, well, I haven't seen any ads or I haven't seen these ads. We target people very specifically. That's like the evidence-based way to do this. And so if you're not seeing ads about youth prevention for nicotine, I don't want to presume anybody's age, but it might be about your target population.
My almost 16-year-old.
Great, that's yeah.
Go ahead.
If I could ask a question about how that messaging is created, and is it mostly resources at the national level or someplace else that we are utilizing here in Vermont, or are there conversations with youth in Vermont about the best messaging streams, platforms, any other avenues? How does that work?
So I will say to start with, we do test our messaging, and I'm going to hand it over to Rhonda to tell you more about what we're borrowing and stealing and what we're developing in home. But it is, again, like the wonderful thing about this program is how much information we have about what works and how to get real communication that is actually effective across two different populations. But Rhonda, can you speak more to where the provenance of the media campaigns we have?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we have buckets in our media every year that are aimed for adults and informing and motivating to quit and where they can find those resources. And those we have historically, until the Office of Smoking and Health was eliminated last April, to use the tips from former smokers, which ended in August of 2025. Those assets are coming back online, but they're not in full. But our program really likes to use the evidence base and, like you're mentioning, what's available and what's been tested from CDC, and the tips from former smokers is one of the best evidence quit ad campaigns that's ever been produced. In addition to that, for both adults and youth, we look to other states. What have they used that has worked? And so they've tested. If we haven't tested, then the assets that we're using, including for youth, have been. And you may recall that our Unhyped campaign, which we started in 2019 in response to the vaping epidemic we are seeing in our data, we tested those messages, and it has, I'll be honest, been harder for us to test all of the message every year because unfortunately prices have gone up, as Shayla mentioned. But our latest campaign message under Unhyped to address youth vaping is from Maine, and it tested the messaging we're using, tested very well. So those are a couple of the ways we approach our media campaigns, and happy to answer any other questions around that.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I ask is I would think the very dynamic nature of the products in this space sort of demands or necessitates this kind of constant message examination, because one day it's this, 6 months from now it's something different. So it seems like there's some good practices in place with respect to borrowing and collaborating.
Yeah.
And Shayla, may I add?
Yeah.
That is such a good point. And so we collect data every year from the metrics. So always asking ourselves, what are we aiming to, who are we aiming to reach? Are we reaching them? And which ads, which message packages are working the best, resonate the most? And we've seen, and kind of not surprisingly, that for youth in particular, it shifted from our harm packaging, messaging that was really needed early on. There's still a lack of perception of harm to be as high as we want it to be around vaping products among youth, but we've definitely made some progress. But where we needed to shift it that we saw in our response data is anxiety, stress are two drivers of why continued use or even starting to use, in addition to the novelty of products, which is a big hurdle for us to address because it's, as you said, it's always emerging products are always coming online.
Thank you.
The next big bucket is treatment, so cessation work. And I'm going to get into this in a minute. Rep. Garofano, you're asking like, where is that and how do we invest in it? We can break that down in a second, but we do invest heavily in that. That is a very important space. Do a lot of data and evaluation. So that's that yellow bucket. And then finally, of course, we need the human beings to actually do the work. So again, this report is going to go into all the details about how we're using our money. And I want to make sure I'm using your guys' time well. But I do want to just reiterate, we measure what we're doing and we make sure that it is working. And I think, Rep. Bishop, your point about products, now we're looking at pouches and like that's a whole other space that's happening. And so this program while it has this deep bench of knowledge and effective interventions, it has to keep adapting to what's coming up and what's new. And so I just really want to make sure folks feel confident that we are looking at whether it's working and adapting what we're doing. So I'm going to leave this report here, and we can give you the link to that. Minute. Let me get to the next tab. Sorry, guys. The next tab I'm going to show you is the data pages. Hopefully, nope. It's not the data pages. 1 second. So you asked a lot about data, or those were questions that were brought up to us. And the program, sorry, I'm gonna scroll, close your eyes. There's a lot of data, like I said, but we produce this every year. And it has a huge amount of information around trends and use in the state of Vermont. So I heard requests for e-cigarette and vape use. And so the table of contents can help it feel less overwhelming. You can choose what you're looking for. Tons of information about who's using, like what do these trends look like over time. We're putting together in this report many different data sources. So we're telling you at the bottom which ones we're pulling from, but it's not just one data source, it is many in this product. Electronic vaping, what's the actual P stand for? Product, am I saying product twice? Yes, okay, sorry. Thanks. Did I get that right? Here's the use trend that I think was asked for specifically. What you see here is that while we are, thank goodness, down from 26%, which is a terrifying number, in 2019, a piece that we wanted to highlight is unfortunately that 16% in 2023, those youth who are using a lot more frequently. And so the intensity of use is worse than it was back in 2015. We are lower than the US for adults, which is good news. Obviously, we want to keep going. I'm going to scroll a little bit more. Sorry, guys. I think an important piece to look at is, of course, always bringing our attention to health disparities. So we do have data on different groups of Vermonters and the rates at which they are using, sorry, I had one more one I wanted to get out of here. This was the one I wanted to get out of here. So the other piece to look at is folks who are on Medicaid versus the statewide numbers, and you see that those numbers are double, right, higher for adult. Again, this is an adult number. So like hundreds of pages of information here. I'm gonna take a second to go back to the top again. Sorry, close your eyes. The other issue you asked about was flavors.
There's a question.
Oh, yeah.
How do you know?
You don't like my scrolling?
No, I don't mind. I don't mind. I keep busy, so I'm not looking
Okay,
at
good.
you. I was asked not to look at people giving testimony, so I try to do this, but I still listen. So how do you know the Medicaid?
How do we know
How
the
do you
Medicaid
know
rates?
people are on Medicaid, they buy e-cigarettes? How would you know that data? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep, hold on, let me.
because you can't buy it on Medicaid, right?
No.
Yeah, so how would you know?
Give me
that
1
data?
second and I will tell you the data sources there. Sorry. This is from Breakfast. So this is from one of our statewide surveys, where we ask about all different types of health outcomes, and vaping is one of those things, but we also ask about a lot of different demographics in that survey. So people are telling us, yes, I vape.
Oh, okay.
My
So
insurance
coming
type.
from the people. I was just curious how they would, how a store would know.
No,
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Make sure I was right before I told you.
Sheila, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that 16%, which I find so concerning, but
It's-
that's
yeah.
not like decreasing, right? Like with all this effort and investment, we're still seeing really high number of kids. And my daughter is in 10th grade, and when she was in 7th and 8th grade, she would come home and say, I cannot use the bathroom in our middle school.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and this is 3-4 years ago, and it's not budging. So like, I'm just curious, and I know you're not prepared to I think you said you don't want to.
We're taking
Your
notes. Don't worry.
position.
Ask the question. Well,
But when reducing access to, especially like we had the bucket the other day of, there's games and Sharpies and, really attractive to kids as young. And like, I'm worried for like 5th graders now.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're so susceptible to this colorful, gamified, and like, would the health department say like reducing access to those fun, exciting looking things would have a chance of bringing that number lower?
yes. So from a public health, 100%.
Okay.
From a public health perspective, doesn't matter if we're talking about alcohol, cannabis, nicotine, tobacco, name the product we don't want kids getting their hands on. Practices that involve making it attractive to children through colors, games, characters, flavors, those all target youth, because we have science to back this up, but you can also use logic, right? Like if we make it bubblegum flavored, children are going to be more likely to try it than if it's tobacco flavored.
Right, and the double dopamine of the nicotine and the game, the higher my score, the more.
So yes, I think to answer your question broadly, like this is in looking at where product placement is, right? Who it's going at, like who it's going to target and get at. Yes, those are all things that we look at and think about and have impact.
Go ahead, Rich.
Is there an explanation as to why there's this peak in 2019 that goes
Yeah.
up quickly and drops quickly?
I'm
I mean,
gonna
not-
see if Rhonda has an answer to
Not
that.
drops
I
as
don't
low as
off
we
the
would
top of my
like,
head,
but
no.
it's.
Rhonda, do you have an answer there?
There's a couple reasons. So you may recall that when Juul came out, it had a novel design and it was discreet. And so easy to use in schools and workplaces. But that was already included in our Clean Indoor Air Act in terms of not being able to use tobacco substitutes, e-cigarettes in workplaces, public places, schools. However, because of this design, it caught on. So Juul was, as a company, very adept at making these products very attractive to kids. And secondly, is that the onset of nicotine salts. So with this new formula, that Juul was the first company to make that very accessible. And nicotine salts act quicker, they're more powerful, and have a stronger, fast hit. And so you'll hear you say, because nicotine salts have continued to be used, Juul is still a popular product, but there are other products that have become, and we see in our data that every year we're seeing a new product be the most popular product in Vermont. We could talk about that for some time about why that is. But just in terms of why 2019, we saw that surge is kids were responding and really adapting to getting a hit from this novel, easy to use product in schools. And it created a lot of havoc. So why it came down. The nicotine salts stayed the same. However, public health departments across the nation, and at that time, the FDA did make available new campaigns aimed for reducing youth use. And so between our efforts, we worked really hard to use our resources, and we shift within our budget, our annual budget, more to youth media campaigns, more to community-based initiatives, more to helping schools really help them face what was a challenging time. And that challenge still remains. We do hear still from schools about vaping and nicotine pouches disrupting the classroom environment. But the good news is that we did see that reduction from that very high prevalence.
So would it be correct to read this and to interpret or to understand your testimony as somewhat the novelty, and that's worn off, if you will, and good, strong inroads through campaigns, and they've just kind of plateaued now on their effectiveness, the campaigns, and you're now just kind of adapting as you go to identify new ways to create those campaigns?
Well, it's ever evolving. So while we made inroads and really, I think, kind of shaming Juul as a company, and they went through multiple lawsuits by states, and those settlement dollars came into many states, including into Vermont, and some states applied it to doing more prevention efforts. Our state dedicated to other uses. But I think that I want to give credit to the legislature, because in 2019, the 3 prevention policies were passed in response to what we were seeing in the data. And one of those was establishing the 92% wholesale tax on these products. So that was a great step. And secondly is the online sales delivery ban, another great step. Still didn't take care, right? We have to use multiple strategies, multiple evidence-based approaches to further reduce. And this bill, S198, does do some of those key components to, we hope, further reduce. But one thing that we're really grappling with, both for the devices that will be banned through S198, but also, unfortunately, just in non-smart devices, vape products, we're seeing larger cartridges. I was just looking at data yesterday around how 2019, we saw like 2 milliliter cartridges. And those are still available today, but what is more common is 16 milliliter cartridges. And one of the House committee members brought this up in terms of why is the nicotine concentration going up? Well, yes, the bath salts, yes, in terms of these larger cartridges that allow a lot more nicotine exposure. And so we also need to, as we go through regulation is what more needs to be done to reduce youth initiation and use.
Thank you.
All right, so this is just specifically, this slide is on menthol flavored, and this is looking at adults. So I'm gonna go pretty quick because that wasn't the specific request, but you can just see that here we see that BIPOC and LGBTQ plus have higher rates of use for those products in Vermont. Rhonda and I sort of have alluded to this, but I think it is really important, and it kind of goes, Rep. Garofano, to your question about kids and age. That age is really important. Age of initiation is really, really, really important. So we have data that show that youth who try flavored tobacco products before age 13 are 5 times more likely to use vapes and 9 times more likely to use cigarettes. One of the things I wanted to make sure to touch on before I left was questions around like, what is the cost of tobacco use, and like, what does that cost society? And I have some data on that. I think what I want to highlight is a lot of our cost metrics are about tobacco, not necessarily about pouches or vapes, because we just haven't developed that yet. And we are working on that with our national and academic partners. But regardless, if you look at this number, when I tell you those cost numbers, you can see that even if you start with vapes, that you are still more likely to use cigarettes down the line. Okay, I'm gonna pause there for 1 second and stop sharing and get to a new slide. So again, that's hundreds and hundreds of pages. Please explore them. I will send them to Lori, and we really welcome your questions on them. There were some questions about treatment and what does treatment look like, and this is going to be focused for the moment on just our 802 quits, and then we can go beyond that. But we do measure whether our treatment works, and 802 quits is one of our main investments. It's our quit line. Youth are targeted to have them go to this quit line, and they do use it. So it's not just an adult resource, and it is obviously statewide and online. We estimate that for every $1 spent on 802 quits, Vermont saves between $5.59 and $6 in healthcare costs and productivity. So there's a return on investment there. It's not obviously that you call 802 quits and are instantly cured. It still takes a long time for people to quit. It takes multiple attempts for people to quit. But regardless of the fact that it doesn't work the first time for everyone and it doesn't work always, this is an effective strategy, and we are measuring it, and we do have a lot of data on it. So I just wanted to put that out there in the world.
Do you get any state funds for 802 quit?
So the tobacco program has 3 major sources of funding. State funding through, Rhonda, you can kick me under the proverbial table, state funding through the tobacco settlement funding money, money that we use through Medicaid, so global commitment dollars, and then federal grant money. It's about 1/3 each. And we use that all together to do all of these different programs. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that's what the tobacco settlement was for.
Yeah, correct.
Shayla, do you have a breakdown, and you can follow up, of how many kids under 18 are accessing this 802?
I do. Hold on.
Yay.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing again, but like so much more information there that we're happy to get into. But now I'm gonna go to some of your questions. We're just going to read the answers. So Rhonda, if you know those off the top of your head, you can go. Yep, I got it. Okay, 802 quits. Overall, we've got 44% of folks surveyed were ages 12 to 25, said they had ever seen or heard information about 802 quits. So this information is getting to these youth, it's getting to young adults. And then, one sec. Do you have the percent, Rhonda, of folks in 802 quits who are young? I saw that somewhere, but I don't see it now.
Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think
know-
about that, I'm gonna tell them about the other resource that we fund. So another resource that we fund while Rhonda looks for that piece of information is My Life, My Quit, which is really specifically targeted at youth. And this, you know, when we think about like making sure that we have something that's accessible to kids, that they're comfortable using, that they can, you know, they can text, they can do it in various different ways. We have seen that among those who have seen or heard about My Life, My Quit, 29% decided to reduce how often they vape and smoke, and 29% advised a friend not to vape or smoke. And then 25% decided to stop vaping or smoking. So it is working, it is out there. We are investing in these resources.
Are there any other types of like treatment targeted?
Yes.
Efforts?
Yes. Hold on one sec. I literally have pages trying to respond to all you guys' questions, so give me a minute to get to the ways that we target schools.
You know, this can be a pop quiz.
Well, I told Rhonda it's like defending a thesis dissertation that you didn't write.
Oh, that's true.
So we fund, we're working, and Rhonda, if you want to jump in and cut me off, you are welcome to do this. We fund, the quit line is obviously the biggest one, but then we work with the substance use disorder programs with the SAPs, the student assistant professionals, to do trainings and support them in the work there. And also working with, Rhonda, we're doing trainings with counselors, correct? I believe we're training some counselors too, in terms of how to do counseling with youth. I think one of the things that we are finding is, and this was a little while ago with the advent of Juul and the increase in vaping, but sort of some of the more traditional techniques were not necessarily, you know, we had to adapt what we were doing to be able to help kids who were using some of the newer technologies. And that's going to probably happen again with pouches as the products continue to change. All right.
Sheila, do you
Yeah,
mind if I
got
just
it, fine.
add that, so we serve roughly 3,000 people a year, with 802 quits. And, I'm trying to get you the exact number for youth in 2025. But what we have seen is that an increase in youth, who are using and it was designed by youth, a text-based program called My Life, My Quit, which Shayla mentioned. We do see under awareness of that resource. So we're constantly looking at how, in particular on social media where they are, can we be there enough, have enough of a social media presence with My Life, My Quit, so that we can serve them. My Life, My Quit is only, I think it went online in 2020, so it's a new brand. Whereas 802 Quits, we started that in 2013. So we've had a lot more time to build the brand awareness, and it's going to still take us time and resources to do that from My Life, My Quit. There is also an effective online text-based program, This Is Quitting, that is run by the Truth Initiative. And the Truth Initiative is solely funded by MSA dollars. And so as a program, we support and we try to link youth to what is going to work for them. And it can include that text-based program as well. Shayla was mentioning that we have been offering scholarships for facilitators to get trained in not on tobacco. This is an evidence-based program in person with that trained facilitator. It can be at schools. And when I started in the program around in 2011, our program spent about $200,000 on not on tobacco to train and support those facilitators and student groups across the state. Our budget is smaller now, but we felt it important to do what we can in providing scholarships for not on tobacco. The world has changed since 2011, 2012. And so it's not as good a fit for vaping cessation is what we're finding this year. I was just checking on it. But nonetheless, we're trying to see what and multiple strategies to help youth get the resources they need. And we've set aside funding in our 2027 budget for supporting scholarships for community-based tobacco treatment specialists, which can be based at a school or community setting or a clinical setting to increase access to treatment, including for youth.
Thank you.
To go back to the question, when we look at like what are people accessing and where are they accessing it, schools are referring kids to their pediatrician and to counseling and to other spaces and places. And I think the really important thing is what Rhonda said, which is that we need to continue to work with partners and communities as we innovate how to address the newer products and technologies as they emerge for youth, and make sure that we're meeting them where they are. And I think it's really great that we have this new brand that is specifically for kids so that they are feeling comfortable accessing it. So not that the work is done here, it's never going to be, but we know it is an issue. We know it is a problem. We're here and work on it. That's cool.
And Shayla and committee, I just got the data for calendar year 2025. There were about 400 enrollments in the quit line among youth ages 13. So 13 is the youngest age that you can enroll in the quit line through age 24. I don't have it like to age 21, but through that age range, 13 to 24, that represents about 15% of our total enrollments.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you give that number again? The 400?
400 youth aged 13 to 24.
Okay, I wanted to move. You guys had asked about the costs, so I did just want the program put together costs of what does tobacco cost per month. So again, I want to note this is about tobacco use specifically, and we're going to have to adapt to what it means specifically for nicotine. However, just a reminder that many people who start by using vapes or pouches or other forms do end up smoking. Annual healthcare costs in Vermont directly caused by smoking is about $404 million. Medicaid costs specifically linked to smoking in Vermont is about $93.7 million. We estimate that residents, state and federal tax burden from smoking caused government expenditures are approximately $980 per household. Smoking productivity losses in Vermont are approximately $576 million. And then we think that based on Vermont Medicaid spending of the $1.9 billion in 2022, for every 1% decrease in smoking rate among Medicaid insured adults from 2021 to 2022, Vermont is estimated to save about $8.3 million in 2023. So that's like trying to pull it out year by year there. With the 2.4% decrease in smoking from 21 to 2022, Sorry, I'm not going to repeat those. That's too complicated. And then I already told you the return on investment for 802 quits. But again, helping people stop is obviously preventing people from starting is the best way to save money, but then helping people stop is still just a huge financial benefit. Obviously, we're most worried about personal health and well-being, but it's a good investment. That was a lot of information. And I could do, we could do a lot more, but I know what's helpful. Ron and I can come back. We can come back with more people. We can come back with more data. You tell us. And if you give us a little more specificity, we can put it into a presentation. So I'm not scrolling through hundreds of pages and making you dizzy.
Just quick thing. Thanks, Sheila.
That
Just
passed my
going-
dissertation.
You did, fantastic. Going through like the annual report that
Yeah.
popped on there, just briefly looking at it. There was a thing in there that the zoning restriction, it reduced exposure to tobacco to youth to tobacco retailers for nearly 900. What is that zoning restriction and how many municipalities have that in place?
Okay.
That's a good question.
It was just interesting to see
Rhonda
like.
might want to chime in.
Rhonda, do you have that off the top of your head? Let me.
Well, if you're referring to what St. Albans recently, yes, okay. So it's my understanding we have one town that has basically designated a zoning area where tobacco retailers can be located away from Main Street, away from the high school. And that took a couple years of education and effort, and just increased understanding around the evidence that the more youth see when they're just going to and from school, when they're out in their community. And I think you heard from Dr. Volante the other day around the influence of that promotion and advertising and just seeing tobacco normalized. Influences starting to use as a youth and continuing to use. So St. Albans took a good step in saying we're going to make it less likely for youth and those who are wanting and trying to quit by doing that zoning change. And I heard a couple of weeks ago that there's now another town that is looking at the very same ordinance that would allow that zoning change to occur as well.
Yeah, no, it sounded like that was a great prevention and community impact that took place and at what cost? No investment needed, they just changed the zoning. Thank you.
Other questions for Shayla and Ron? Thank you very much for your testimony and the information. And we'll chat and see if we'd like you to come back with more narrowed questions.
Great.
And we'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe that wraps up our work this week.
No.
Are
Nope.
you serious?
Wow.
But it's on edge.
Wait, what am I missing?
Let's
Thank
keep
you all
going.
for your work. We will be back next week, hopefully